Okay, if you ever tried to mix your flash with ambient before, you probably heard of this device. It's basically saying just underexpose the ambient by 2/3 of a stop. Well, for me, I think if you just started, this is not a bad advice because underexpose the ambient and make it look a little bit darker. So when you use the flash, your subject will be more stand out. But you need to be careful with this because you shouldn't treat this as a rule or some sort of a magic formula. The reason is because how you set up your exposure for the ambient is entirely depends on what lighting effect and what mood you're trying to create. So when you underexpose your ambient, sometimes it will give you a great result, but sometimes it just kills the vibe or completely ruin your lighting. So in this video, we're going to unpack how the ambient and the flash interact with each other and how shall we set up our exposure so it will balance these two things so it will work for our subject, our background, and for the look that we want to achieve. Of course, we're going to go through like what will be the challenge and how to deal with them. Okay, first let's talk about these two key components that is very crucial when we decide how shall we set up the exposure. The first one is the lighting effect. So when we're shooting on location, we deal with these four things. So the ambient light, which is completely controlled by your camera setting, and then the flash, which is partially controlled by the setting of your flash and partially controlled by the setting of your camera. We also deal with the background. The lighting of the background will be entirely depends by the ambient light and also the subject. The lighting of the subject going to be depends on both the flash and the ambient light. So you can see there are quite a bit of moving parts in here, and then they kind of like working together, interact with each other. And the tricky thing is when you change one thing, you might end up changing the other thing as well. So that's but how these four things working together will ultimately decide what will be the final lighting effect. Okay, so that's the lighting effect. And then let's talk about the mood. So different photographers prefer to shoot different way. Some photographers like to experiment with many different things. So for example, there's one look is like a very more contrasty, moody, like low key, like a punchy lighting. And there's the other look is a bright, high key and dreamy look. And then there's another look which is just like a natural editorial look. So all depends on like what mood you're trying to create, and then the exposure definitely going to be different. So in general, when you want to have like a more like a moody, punchy look, then you want to underexpose the ambient a little bit. When you want the like those dreamy, high key look, you want to overexpose your ambient a little bit. When you just want to like the natural and editorial look, you probably just will be fine when you just match the ambient. All right, so that's the two key components. And then now let's talk about the challenge. The challenge, like, yeah, so both of these two key components are very important for us to create great photography. And it's very easy to get one of them done perfectly. But the tricky thing is get both done perfectly. Because the reason is these two things, sometimes they work against each other. So let me give you a couple of examples. So if you want to shoot this like a dark, moody look, and then you want to make your ambient a little bit darker, so to create a contrast, so you underexpose your ambient. But when you do that, you also underexpose the fill light. So the fill light there's gonna be less fill light on your subject. It means that it might end up get to a point that the shadow just too dark and there's not enough detail in there. So that's one problem. The other problem is when you want to shoot the high key look, the dreamy, bright, high key look. So you have to overexpose your ambient a little bit. So that way you might end up leave the shadow too much, end up the lighting on your subjects too flat. So now you see the challenges. How do we deal with this? So deal with this like first when we deal with this moody look. So when you when you do not have enough information for the shadow is just too dark. Normally there are 4 different ways to do this. So first, use 2 light sources. Like apparently one light still work as a key light, the other light gonna work as a fill light. And because you can control the level of the fill light, so you can get any level of contrast you want. This is very good. But the drawback of this, of course, your lighting setup gonna be more complicated. considering the fact we're shooting outdoor, you definitely don't want to deal with too many different light stands. But I do have a solution which is attached to different lights on the same light stand. If you want to learn more about that, you should watch this video. Okay, the next solution. The next solution is simply just use a one larger light source, because the larger light source cover more area. But don't just point the light like directly at your subject, and then that way you just make the key light bigger. So you basically change the ratio between the key light and field light. So that's not ideal. Normally what you like to do is that you put the light at an angle. Like for example, I put the light to my side. So one side of the light source is closer to me, the other side is further away, because the light is very big, so the difference is big. So because of inverse square law, the light intensity will be very different. So this way, you're not gonna mess up the ratio between the area of the key light and the area of the field light, and then you still maintain this smooth transition. Many people call this a Faraday light, but no matter whatever the name is, like that's how I normally will do if I use a large light source. But large light source usually is something I will avoid when you're shooting outdoor, because they just a large light source require a bigger light, a heavier light stand. It's just gonna make your setup too big and heavy, just not very practical to use outdoor. So then the third one is you can use reflectors to help with the field light. And these reflector doesn't have to be an actual reflector. You can use many things that can bounce the light when you're shooting outdoor. It can be a wall, can be the concrete floor, or like a white sand beach. It could be just like a car parked nearby. And not just you can use them, you can also adjust the level by moving your subject closer or away from these reflecting surface. If it's a wall, just move closer. If it's a sand beach, you can try to get them to sit down or stand up, so that way you adjust the distance so you can control the level of field light. It's still a pretty good way, and then this usually gives you a very natural look, and you don't need to bring anything. It's just right there. And then the very last way is you can avoid this issue at the very first place. Instead of have to fight with the background, underexpose and do all this, and then fix the problem come with it by like add field light, this and that. You can just choose a background. It doesn't require you to underexpose it that much. Like the easiest thing to do is just choose a darker background. So then you don't have to fight that much to bring down the exposure. So you can still maintain the proper level of the contrast on your subject, and then still can achieve the goal of make your subject stand out from the background. And then now let's take a look, talk about the other situation, which is like the high key look, the dreamy, bright look. So that way, like your biggest issue usually is you leave the shadow too much, the lighting too flat. So basically you need to add a little bit more shadow, the field light is too much. So basically to do this is pretty simple. You just need to stay away from any like reflecting surface. Like don't stand, stay away from any like a white wall or something. Usually it's very easy to do this. Like you just need to make sure you're shooting at an open space. There's nowhere to bounce the light. Normally that's good enough. I mean, worst case scenario, you still need to add more shadows. You can just find something work as a naturally negative field, that like something darker surface to help you to absorb the light. Like for example, you can even like just put your subject like somewhere under the shade, and then that by itself can work perfectly as a negative field. Then help to achieve the contrast level and still maintain this high key look. And of course, just same as the dark background, you can just like same as the low key solution. For the high key solution, you can choose some background that is just easier for you. Like instead of you have to slow down your shutter speed to make the ambient brighter, you can just choose a brighter ambient, and then because the fact that the background is brighter, so that way you can still keep your shutter speed fast enough so you can bring enough shadow back to the subject and maintain the contrast, maintain the definition between the key light and the field light. Okay, so this is what I want to share with you guys regarding this exposure setup for when you're shooting outdoor with ambient light and the flash. So if there's one final suggestion I can give to you guys is like, remember there's no such thing called a correct exposure that will fit all these scenarios. There's just no such thing. And don't chase the numbers. Instead, you should trust your instinct and let the lighting guide to you. Don't rely on light meters or anything, or the camera settings or everything. Like you just look at the back of the camera and then get a feel of like what look it has, and then how far away it is from the final look you want, and just make an adjustment accordingly. When you see the problem, try to narrow down exactly what is the problem. Is it because the fill light is too dark, or is it because the fill light is too bright? Normally that's the only thing you have to deal with. And of course you have to worry about the composition and everything, and for that you should watch this video, and it's talking about composition. Anyway, if you make it this far, and thank you, and I would really appreciate if you can give a like, or if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.